Are you posh? Have you been skiing in Chamonix? Now, for a British person, this is basically the same question, but Chamonix doesn't need to be expensive, so join me in the off-season as we check out one of their hotels.
The hotel has two entrances, and from what appears to be the front of the hotel, it looks a little bit drab. But the back entrance, it is much nicer with plenty of parking spaces, some good quality bikes to rent, and some basic seating. My hotel room was on the top floor and it was very small and basic, and it was also very hot, and with there being no air conditioning, it really wasn't the most comfortable place to stay. As I say, the room is basic, but you do have the essentials that you need. There's a bit of a space to hang your clothes with those hangers that you can easily steal. The highlight of the room, and perhaps it's a bit of a stretch to call this a highlight, but that would be the skylight looking out with the mountain views. Pretty cool. And keeping with the theme, the bathroom was basic too, complete with a very retro hairdryer, possibly older than I am.
So why am I in Chamonix? Well, this isn't really too relevant to the video, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So I was looking for some cheap flights that are available in May, and Geneva is one of the options that came up. I thought, what's near Geneva? Well, Mont Blanc. I'd never visited Mont Blanc before, so I thought this was a great opportunity. So I decided to stay in Chamonix. Chamonix is just an hour-and-a-half bus ride from Geneva, and I also had a little bit of an opportunity to check Geneva out before catching the bus. And whilst the lake there is very pretty, my summarised review of the place is very expensive and boring. Maybe I missed something. I definitely missed the money that I spent there. But I am very excited to be checking out Chamonix, so let's go do that now.
One of the strong positives of the hotel is definitely its location, right next to this quaint square of a church, and you're pretty much right in the centre of Chamonix. The town itself is pleasant and a very nice place to wander around, with a fast flowing river that runs through the town, powered by the melting snow from the mountains above. There are two train stations in Chamonix, offering lots of day trip options and access to quieter and different villages around the area. The main attraction though is the cable car that takes you almost to the top of Mont Blanc. My advice, and what I originally planned to do, is to take one of the earlier cable cars before the queue starts to form. I left it a little bit too late and ended up in a very cramped, uncomfortable queue for around about an hour. Not particularly fun. The ride, however, to the top is an experience, and the views from every stage of it are absolutely incredible. And with the high altitude comes a chance of feeling the effects of being 3,842 metres above sea level. And like a fish that is 3,842 metres out of water, I felt a little bit strange. Though the highest part of the experience is the ticket price at around about £75 return. Back down at the hotel, I checked out the spa area. Slight dungeon vibes down there. It is, I guess, well equipped, but not enough to tempt me to use it.
Good morning, just got back from breakfast and unfortunately breakfast wasn't included in the room rate, so when checking in I paid the additional £15 per person per night, which I think is possibly good value, especially if you consider how expensive it would have been to eat out every morning. Does that mean the breakfast was good? Well, no, but it also wasn't bad. The quality was undoubtedly decent and the room was set out relatively nice, however there was a bit of a lack of range. In conclusion, it was fine. So I've now checked out of Le Faucigny Hotel and Spa, and I'm now out enjoying the last hike of the trip here in the Chamonix area. So the total cost of the room was £80 per night, and as I mentioned previously, that doesn't include breakfast and the room rates. The general idea of the video was to come to an expensive destination and stay at a more of a budget hotel, but still have a good time. And I've had lots of previous trips similar to this. On my website you can see lots of budget breakdowns of me going to some very expensive places, but on a budget and having an amazing time. And I think that is definitely possible here in Chamonix. However, personally, I went well over budget. Food, restaurant, activities, they're all very expensive here. So if you have the money, please definitely come to Chamonix. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you don't, come anyway. Just make sure you bring your packed lunch. So would I recommend the hotel? Well, no, I wouldn't actually. Now, obviously there are better and bigger rooms available at the hotel than the one that I stayed at, but the size of the room being small wasn't the biggest issue. In general, the cleanliness wasn't too great. The bed wasn't that comfortable. And just in general, everything was a bit mid. However, some positive points, the location is fantastic, and I think this is probably one of the reasons why I enjoyed my stay so much. However, the hotel, it doesn't get my thumbs up. Anyway, I'm now going to enjoy the rest of my hike, and hopefully I'll see you somewhere new next time.